All righty. So I am so excited to have Lauren. She has been working with us for a couple years now. And I met her when I was over at Jinx East Elementary. She is a wonderful elementary school counselor. So she has had a full day of work already. Her and I partnered together doing family engagement presentations at the school. So we partner with her, and we're thankful, Lauren, for you giving us your evening after a crazy busy day at school. And you guys are in for a great treat. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lauren. But I do want to mention we're going to save all questions till the end. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, and then that way we can answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. She always has so much great information, so we want her to keep rolling, and then we'll conclude with questions. Thank you, guys. And Lauren, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Erin. And also know that Erin will send out an email with a copy of the presentation, and I will also include a lot of extra handouts and links to resources, because there's no way in 1 hour we can cover everything there is to know about ADHD. So I was telling Erin this week, and I laughed at myself. I have ADHD, so this topic is very special for me, but I was not diagnosed. I self-diagnosed in my mid-30s after reading Daniel Amen's book that we'll talk about tonight, Healing ADD. And I kept reading the descriptions. I'm like, I do that, and I do that, and I do that. And it was such a huge moment in my life to know that, oh, all these things that frustrate me about myself, it's a brain thing. It's not me being lazy or it was just overwhelming to me. And the sad thing is I look back and I wish that I could have known about this much earlier, because a lot of times girls are underdiagnosed, and boys can be overdiagnosed. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart. But of course, preparing a presentation on ADHD, I had to finish that last minute. Even though I've been reading and watching videos all summer long, just actually putting it together, I was all of the symptoms of ADHD with that. So I am Lauren Alvarez. I absolutely love teaching. I'm an elementary school counselor, like Erin said. So I am constantly working with students and with families and with teachers to help come up with strategies and supports and things that will help students with ADHD, families who are struggling with the impact of ADD at home. That's my thing. I also teach parenting classes for Oklahoma Family Network and Family and Children Services, and then do a lot of professional development for my school and other organizations. I love, love, love what I do. My goal tonight is one of the biggest things that helped me understand ADD and also ADHD, depending on which diagnostic statistical manual you're using, is to focus on how it is a brain thing. A lot of times with ADHD, we will focus only on the behavior. And then we put a moral interpretation of that, meaning they're lazy. They're not trying hard enough. They don't want to do better. This is a choice thing. When I read Daniel Amen's book, Healing ADD, it helped me realize this is a brain thing that also has behavior. If it's a brain thing, that takes away the shame. So I really want to build the understanding tonight about the neuroscience of ADD, like how it is a brain thing. Introduce Daniel Amen's 7 Types of ADD, as a really wonderful book that he has. Provide information and resources as we go through the different types of ADD that help you understand good treatment options and what are unique aspects of this different type. And then also provide resources for some parent and family strategies that will help you understand, if you have children with ADHD, what are some things you can do at home? What are some things you can do for yourself? So the heavy focus tonight will be on the brain aspects of ADD, but then also we can't leave out how do we deal with the behaviors, because that's what everyone gets frustrated about. So what is ADD? So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Previously, It used to be called ADD or ADHD. Now all of it is lumped under that. So I don't like that everything is included under the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, because not everybody has hyperactivity, but that is just how it is diagnosed currently. So that's why I like the 7 types. It affects about 5 to 10% of people. Daniel Amen, through his brain imaging studies that he did, discovered there are 7 different types, and the brain images for those different types are very unique. Each type needs its own special treatments. Some types do not use stimulants if you are going to use medication. Some types need different kinds of supplements. So I like, as we go through the different types, you'll hear more about that. And really, ADHD, it's like having different brain patterns. Depression shows up on brain scans in a different way. Joy shows up on brain scans in a different way. ADHD shows up on brain scans in a different way. So let's talk about the brain impact. ADHD, it impacts different parts of the brain as well as brain neurotransmitters. These are the chemicals that are in our brain that impact everything. They impact mood, they impact the ability to concentrate, they impact, physically, they impact our ability to sleep, they impact our ability to remember things. In ADD, ADHD, it doesn't just impact different parts of the brain, it also impacts those neurotransmitters. You've probably heard these words: dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. So here are the different parts that different types of ADHD impact. So first is the prefrontal cortex. When I teach this to kids, I say, okay, this is the area that's right behind your forehead. That's your thinking brain. The prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum, those parts of the brain, they control things like concentration, your attention span, your judgment. Should I do this? Should I not do that? Organization, your planning, and your impulse control. So some types of ADD, actually all types, impact the prefrontal cortex in some way, as well as the cerebellum. There's also the anterior cingulate. And again, I am not a neuroscientist, but me understanding what's going on upstairs a little bit helps me know how to better treat my ADHD. So the anterior cingulate, that's the part that allows the brain to shift gears. So instead of just staying focused on one thing, it can shift and focus on something else, and shift and focus on something else, as well as detecting errors. It's kind of like your little personal editor. The temporal lobes, that's the part of the brain that's involved with memory, learning, emotional reactions, something's kind of covering that, your mood stability, so the ups and downs of your mood, as well as your visual processing. So visual processing, you need that for reading. You need visual processing to interpret other people's body language. There's a lot of things that goes with. The basal ganglia is a large structure deep in the brain that produces dopamine. So there are some types of ADD that interfere with the brain producing enough dopamine. And then there's the limbic system, that sets emotional tone. That's the bonding part of the brain. A lot of times people call that the emotional part of the brain, or where love is formed. So ADHD is a brain thing. It impacts neurotransmitters as well as these different parts. So we're going to get into what are these 7 types. And I love listening to him talk. So Erin, you'll have to make sure that the sound is showing, people can hear the video, just in case we have that issue. Oh dear.
Okay.
I'm getting
Everybody make sure you're on the English channel, which just go to more interpretation and press English.
And with this being our first one that we're offering in English and Spanish, this will be our learning opportunity as well for the future classes that we offer in English and Spanish. So this is Daniel Amen. He has a wonderful website. If you go onto YouTube and just Google Daniel Amen interviews, and Amen like Amen, A-M-E-N, like the end of a prayer. He is so amazing, so articulate, but all of his stuff is he's a psychiatrist. He was interested in the brain, and with all of the different imagery studies that he's done, he was able to not just talk to a client in the doctor's office and say, okay, what are some symptoms you're seeing? He was actually able to look in the brain and say, okay, when their brain scan looks like this, they tend to have these symptoms and have these complaints and have these frustrations. So he really took all this detailed medical knowledge and combined it with behavioral knowledge, and he is fantastic. I absolutely adore him. So hopefully this will make you a super fan of him, and you can just start watching more and more and more videos. Every video I watch of his, I learn so much. So here is Daniel Amen describing the different types of ADD, and then we'll look at each of these individually. All right, here we go.
Type 1 is the classic. Because most people think of ADHD, short attention span, distractibility, disorganization, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. They can't sit still. That's type 1, classic. Type 2 is inattentive ADD, short attention span, distractibility, disorganized, procrastinate, but they're not impulsive. And more common in girls, they're not hyperactive. In fact, they can be a little bit hypoactive. The third one is overfocused ADD, where the problem is not so much you can't concentrate, it's you can't shift your attention, that you get stuck. And if you can't shift your attention, you cannot pay attention. But it's a different mechanism. And I found this to be particularly true in children and grandchildren of alcoholics. And they tend to be argumentative, oppositional, worry. If things don't go their way, they get upset. And on the surface, they appear selfish. They're really not selfish. They're just not flexible. And stimulants tend to make them more worried and more upset. Type 4 is called limbic ADD. It's where their emotional brain is too busy. And it's sort of like ADD plus mild depression. And the glass is always half empty for them. Type 5, which I think is such an interesting one, is temporal lobe ADD. They have problems in one or both of their temporal lobes, often goes with learning problems, but mood instability, irritability, temper problems. And then the ring of fire, that's the one I may be most known for. The problem is not low activity, it's too much activity. Please don't give them a stimulant because they can become violent and aggressive. Actually use a supplement to calm things down in their brain, very effective. And then the last one's anxious ADD, where they're really anxious. And so they tend to be early to things, but disorganized, distracted, so on. So knowing the type, yes. And that's why Ritalin has a bad reputation. For the right brain, it's miraculous. For the wrong brain, it's a nightmare.
That is Daniel Amen. I just love listening to him. And I am going to be talking more slowly now since someone is interpreting, and I normally talk super fast, so I will try to slow that down. I love what he said about how Ritalin has gotten a very bad reputation. There are some types of ADD that if you use Ritalin, it actually makes it worse. So if you have someone who's not aware of the different types of ADD and they just do, oh, you have ADD, let's give you a stimulant. It doesn't work for everyone, and the brain doesn't need that for that type of ADD. That's why I think it's so important for you to know your type. So each different type has strategies, and we're going to look at those one at a time for all the 7 types. And he has, let me go forward and show you. He has these things, it's called SPECT imagery. It's like a fancy MRI. So it creates a 3D image and to show what parts of the brain are lit up, what parts of the brain are working. This is what changed my life. Actually, when I read his book, Healing ADD, and I saw these pictures, I cried. Because this is my brain in the middle. This was my brain for 36 years of my life. I'm intelligent, I'm warm, I'm empathetic, I'm lovely. But my brain, all these areas are just parts of the areas that aren't, of the brain that aren't working with the ADD brain. the ADD brain has a hard time sending messages. It sends the message, it might not get where it's supposed to go. You can concentrate on things you're interested in. It's very hard to concentrate on things you're not interested in. So I was expecting myself to be able to do everything that other people could do that didn't have ADD. And I didn't understand, why was it so hard? I'm smart. Why can't I be organized? I know better. Why can't I do better? Well, that's because my brain looked like this. So in typical brain, look at that smooth, beautiful surface. An ADD brain without any treatment. And that doesn't necessarily mean medication. It can also be supplements and some natural interventions that he has. That same ADD brain with effective treatments, it's actually has access to all parts of the brain that it needs. When I saw this, it just helped me understand myself so much more. It wasn't a laziness thing. It wasn't there's something wrong with thing. It is, my brain is different than other people's brain. So this is the book, Healing ADD, where it goes through all the different types. Now, how do you know? If you cannot afford $6,000 SPECT images at the Amen Clinic in California, and I think there's one in Texas as well, you can't afford that. He's developed a quiz. So this is a quiz that you could take yourself. This is also a quiz that you could answer kind of on behalf of your children, or some of your older children might be able to answer this for themselves. So let me click on that so you can see. It just takes you to his page, and you just start the test and just start answering questions. At the end, it will tell you, oh, you have type 1, or oh, you have type 3. And that will help you have a better understanding if you have ADD, as well as what type it might be. So that's something that we won't go through that and do that now, but that is something that you can be aware of, is there. And again, that will be emailed to you. So this can stop the shame. So many parents, I find when I am working as a school counselor and their kid is really struggling. First, there's a lot of denial. They say, I don't see these behaviors at home. Well, maybe at home, we allow the kids to be on screens all the time because we can't handle arguing with them anymore. That's a preferred activity, being on a screen. What's not a preferred activity? Finishing a math paper. In the ADD brain, if this is not a preferred activity, like playing a video game or watching a movie or running around outside, I want to do those things. I don't want to do my math. Things that the ADD brain does not want to do, it's super hard to concentrate on. So hopefully when you have a better understanding of this, it'll take away the shame. This is a brain thing. If you need treatment, that is not a stigma. If someone has high blood pressure, do we make them feel ashamed? Oh my goodness, you're taking blood pressure medication? That's awful. You just need to try harder to not have high blood pressure. We would never do that, but we do that with ADHD because we are so focused on the behavior and not realizing the source of the behavior, which is your brain is wired differently. Also teach this to your kids. First, I had to start with me, but this helped me teach this to kids at
Erica,
school.
I accidentally muted you.
Oops. Teach this to your own children if they have ADHD. Teach this to yourself if you
Sorry.
have ADHD. So that is very important. You aren't bad. Your brain is just wired differently. That's the key thing. And I will say when I read this book, it explains so many things about myself that I didn't understand, and I didn't know that this was a brain thing. Seeing those pictures of those brain images just completely, it was a game changer for me. So now we're going to go, I'll come back to the treatment things here in just a second. Also be aware that ADHD can be a superpower. So there are some amazing, wonderful things that have to deal with ADHD, like your energy. Sometimes your energy is what they call through the roof compared to other people's energy. I'm 56 years old and I run around like I'm in my 20s. Now I get tired, at night. I still want to go to bed on time, but we went to Silver Dollar City last Sunday for my daughter's birthday. I drove to Silver Dollar City. was at the park the whole day with 10 ninth grade kids, and I drove 4 hours all the way back, and I wasn't tired. So that is the beauty of ADHD. You can have a lot of energy. Also, sometimes you can develop an amazing self-awareness. You become very aware of your triggers, and that helps you take good care of yourself. There's a lot of resilience. With ADHD, sometimes you forget the thing that you were just upset about, so you can bounce back just like that. I found that is very true for me. I could just bounce back from difficulties, and sometimes it seems like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. And that would be a big deal to somebody else. Creativity, lots of out of the box thinking, solving problems, being able to take a bunch of information from a lot of different sources to solve a problem. Hyper focused. When you are focused, you are unstoppable. What you can produce in a short amount of time is amazing. You have more risk tolerance. So you are willing to take chances on things. Some people call that poor impulse control, but the positive side of that is you're willing to take some risks that other people might not be willing to take. And if you match that with your creativity, it's pretty amazing. So I always like to remind people, think of the positive parts too. So now, there's a lot of, how would I put this? There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of stigma about ADHD treatment because ADHD is often overdiagnosed in young children. We think that, oh, they have a hard time sitting down. Let's put them on Ritalin or let's put them on some medication. And so people, it has developed a bad reputation. Some behavior that looks like ADHD could also be too much screen time, could also be trauma. If you've had trauma, that can also show up as a disorganized brain. But untreated ADD has a huge impact. I know for me, having gone until my mid 30s, finding out that I had ADHD, when my self-esteem was forming, my self-concept was forming, and I could compare myself to other people and look at things that seemed so easy for them that were not easy for me. It had a negative impact on my developing my self-concept and my self-esteem because I received a lot of negative feedback on some of the more annoying behaviors, the procrastination, the messiness, the disorganization, the seeming like I wasn't living up to my potential, when really my brain had a hard time concentrating on things that weren't exciting, like super difficult math and things like that. But without treatment, I mean, that can be difficult. But what I like about Daniel Amen is he doesn't just talk about medication treatment. He also talks about natural supplements, exercise, sleep, those kinds of things, certain foods that you can eat. So we're going to watch a video that talks about ADD treatment as well as some natural ways that you can do that. So we'll watch two different videos. All right, let's see if this works. Here we go.
Let's talk about ADHD.
When it is left untreated, it has bad consequences. And when we talk about medicine, you always want to know what are the side effects. But you also want to ask the question, well, what are the side effects of not treating ADHD? So the hallmark symptoms are short attention span, but not for everything. The second one is they're easily distracted. It's like the world comes at them too fast. The third one is they tend to be disorganized. They tend to procrastinate. They don't do things until someone's mad at them to get it done. And they tend to have impulse control issues. So the first thing, if you have someone who has ADD, it's focus on getting their diet healthy. Magnesium can help, zinc can help, omega-3 fatty acids can help. But if it doesn't work, I will use the medicine because left untreated, there's serious problems with addiction, school failure, bankruptcy, and so on.
Oh,
That gives
Lauren,
you some
it
ideas.
complete.
Sorry.
There we go.
If you don't treat it, there are definitely some risks. And I will need to talk even more slowly because I talk really fast. and it's hard to keep up with me. The next video, he's going to talk about some natural things you can do. And I think it's fantastic. Start with the natural things. I know for my own sons and for myself, me taking extra omega fish oil tablets was a game changer. I started giving those to one of my sons because he had a lot of, his mind just went 1,000 miles an hour. He went off to college, and I had all of his vitamins in his little container that would last a month. And then, of course, they ran out. He didn't fill them back. And he called me about 2 weeks later and said, Mom, I need more vitamins. He could see the difference in his brain on the vitamins and off the vitamins. So start off with the natural things. So let's watch some suggestions Dr. Amen has about that. Okay, here we go.
What about natural ways to help ADD? Often a higher protein, lower simple carbohydrate diet. Exercise can work. Magnesium has been shown to be helpful, as has theanine, ashwagandha, rhodiola, L-tyrosine. So there are a number of supplements that can help. But the most important thing you can do is be in a job you love. Study something you love, because love is a stimulant drug.
And he is so true. Do something you love. One of my sons, he will not allow me to diagnose him, but he really struggled in high school. He struggled turning in his work. He is brilliant. He is so smart. He made very poor grades. And when he got in a car accident at 16, he wrecked his car and he needed to fix it. He discovered by fixing his car, oh my goodness, I love fixing things. I like working with my hands. So I like the puzzle of that. When he found something he loved, he went to a trade school. He now works in a company working on giant natural gas compression engines, and he is he's amazing. He does very well financially. He is completely motivated. He works harder than anybody. He keeps getting promotions after promotions after promotions because he's doing something he loves. What he doesn't love is social studies. What he doesn't love is turning in math homework. But if he needs to turn in a math report for fixing his machines, he's going to do that because he loves his job. So that's another thing, is find the things that your kids love. Find the things that you love. If the job that you have, most of your responsibilities play to your ADHD weaknesses, like maybe you have a weakness with paperwork, but most of your job is paperwork, try to find a job that doesn't have so much paperwork. I actually stepped away from being a therapist because the paperwork part of being a licensed professional therapist, it was overwhelming. I love the face-to-face contact. I could not keep up with the paperwork. So for me, I love school counseling because it's less paperwork, more face-to-face time with kids. I'm still using my strengths, but I'm trying to minimize my natural weaknesses. And I love my job, highly motivated to do my job. So that, he's right about that. Now let's go through the different types just to give you a more detailed description. This will be shared with you so you can take more time to look at these, so you can read along with me. So type 1, classic ADD. This is the traditional, when people think ADD, they think this kind. So here are the symptoms. Inattentive, meaning you can't pay attention. Distractible, hyperactive, disorganized, impulsive. The normal brain, a picture of the normal brain when it's resting, the activity is normal. But when you are trying to concentrate, the brain activity is lower. Someone else trying to concentrate, the brain activity is normal. But in the ADD, type 1 ADD brain, concentration brain activity actually goes down. What are the causes of this? So remember, when we talked about how ADD impacts the brain, it impacts certain neurotransmitters, brain chemicals. Dopamine deficiency, do not have enough dopamine. You have less blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of the brain, and the cerebellum, the things that help you make good decisions and concentrate and regulate emotions and all that. And the blood flow is slower to the basal ganglia. That's the part of the brain that makes dopamine. So the brain is there. If the blood is not getting to the right part of the brain, that part of the brain is not working the way it's supposed to. So what are recommended treatments? This is what I love about Dr. Amen, is he gives you not just medications, but supplements. So here are some things it lists. Stimulant medications, things like Ritalin, Adderall, Vyvanse, or Concerta, or some stimulating supplements like rhodiola, green tea, ginseng, and the amino acid L-tyrosine, which actually helps build dopamine, and extra physical activity, running, walking. Some people, even while doing tasks that they don't want to do, like studying or reading, if you're riding a bike, like an exercise bike while you do that, that can help. If you are having a hard time concentrating, doing a quick walk or going up and down the stairs a few times, that gets blood flow going to the brain. And then fish oil that has high EPA instead of DHA. I will say, me taking my fish oil tablets, it is absolutely, it's a game changer for me. And it's natural. So I like that. I do take a stimulant as well, and that is also a game changer for me. So that's classic type 1. Now, here's the problem. A lot of times when people think ADD, they think about the hyperactive part. And if someone does not have hyperactivity, then they think, oh, you don't have ADHD. Oh, you can concentrate on video games. They don't have ADHD. But those are concentrating on things they want to do. Type 2 is inattentive ADD. So here are the symptoms. A short attention span. I can listen just in small amounts of time. Distractible, disorganized, procrastinate, may daydream, and may be an introvert. Not hyperactive or impulsive. And a lot of girls have type 2 inattentive ADD. So people don't realize what they have as ADD. And that can be very difficult when they see other girls being very organized and able to pay attention, and they can't. What are the causes? Not enough dopamine, so dopamine deficiency, and then low activity in the prefrontal cortex. That's this thinking brain right behind your forehead. Treatments, stimulant medications like Adderall, Vyvanse, or Concerta, or stimulating supplements, amino acids, it lists L-tyrosine, a high protein, low carbohydrate diet, and regular exercise. What's funny is I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes about 5 years ago, and I automatically switched to a higher protein, lower carbohydrate diet. My concentration went through the roof. So sometimes following that, like a diabetic diet, even if you aren't diabetic, that can have a lot of, that can be very helpful with helping your brain work the way it's supposed to. Then there's type 3, over-focused ADD. Sometimes this seems like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So here are the symptoms. They have all the symptoms or some of the symptoms of type 1, classic ADD, but this extra layer, they have trouble shifting attention. So if they are focused on something, trying to get them to focus on something else, that's not easy. They can't go from thought to thought or task to task. They like get stuck in negative thought patterns, negative behaviors. What Dr. Amen and other experts call this is ants, automatic negative thoughts. And it's very hard to shift gears. What causes this? They also have low dopamine and low serotonin. They have an overactive anterior cingulate, which makes flexibility difficult. So that part of the brain that helps shift gears and transition between tasks, that's overactive and it just gets stuck. It's like a car engine stuck in gear. Interestingly enough, stimulant medications are not recommended for this type. So if you gave stimulant medications to a type 3 ADD, it might make things worse. So he recommends supplements like L-tryptophan, HTP, saffron, which is a naturally occurring nutrient that helps burst alertness. He, for this type of ADD, will often prescribe antidepressants because that helps with the serotonin deficiency, like Effexor, Cymbalta, Pristiq. And this type of diet, you avoid a high protein diet because that might trigger mean behavior. Neurofeedback is another wonderful counseling tool that he recommends for this type of ADHD. Neurofeedback, it measures the brain waves. And if you have too much activity in a certain part of the brain, that makes your brain not cooperate well. So neurofeedback does specific exercises to slow down the brain patterns in the parts of the brain that are too much and speed up brain patterns where they need to go faster. And neurofeedback is amazing. 2 of my children have done neurofeedback with fantastic results. All right, then there's type 4 ADD. It's called temporal lobe ADD. So here are the symptoms. Classic ADD. So the hyperactivity, the impulse control, the difficulty concentrating, but there's learning memory problems and often behavioral problems like a quick temper, more anger, more aggression, and a little bit of paranoia. Everyone's out to get me. That's not fair. You're picking on me, that kind of thing. The cause is there are actual abnormalities in the structure of the temporal lobe and decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex. So for this one, he also does not recommend certain stimulant medications. He likes a lot of amino acids that calms down some of the brain activity and keeps things from, like the neurons in the brain, from just constantly sending out messages. Sometimes he even uses seizure medication to treat this type of ADD, and ginkgo and vinpocetine. I don't even know what all of those are. So this particular type, if you gave this type a stimulant, it might make it worse. Then we have limbic ADD. So limbic ADD type 5 is like classic ADD, hard to concentrate, disorganized, those kinds of things. But then you just feel this chronic low level of sadness, not depression, but you seem more moody, more low energy, more feelings of helplessness, or you feel guilty or low self-esteem. What causes this is there's too much activity in the limbic part of the brain. That's the part of the brain that controls your mood, as well as lower prefrontal cortex activity when you're concentrating on a task. So for this, he recommends supplements as well as some antidepressants like Wellbutrin, exercise, fish oil, changes in diet. I have a friend who didn't have all the classic ADD symptoms, did struggle with concentration, went to the doctor saying, I know I have ADD, I'm disorganized, I can't finish things, it's hard for me to concentrate. And the doctor put him on Wellbutrin. It was a game changer for him. Wellbutrin was his ADD medication because it helped with that low level sadness of it, and was very effective for his brain. Then we have type 6, ring of fire. On the SPECT images, it literally looks like there's bright lights in a ring around the picture of the brain. This is too much activity going on all over the brain. So some of the symptoms of this kind of ADD are sensitivity to noise, light, or touch. Just don't touch me, it's too loud. Periods of mean behavior, unpredictable behavior, speaking too fast, anxiety, fearfulness. That could be a sign of ring of fire ADD. And what causes it is there's so much activity in all different parts of the brain. It's just too much. It's like the brain, all the light switches are turning on at the same time. So stimulants for this kind of ADD can make it worse, even make someone aggressive. So he recommends starting off with an elimination diet, meaning take certain things out of the diet. Maybe that's dyes or certain foods that a lot of people are allergic to. He recommends GABA and serotonin. And medications often starts with anti-seizure medications and blood pressure medications like clonidine or guanfacine. I see those a lot as a school counselor, that a lot of kids might be put on that who have lots of aggression issues that they think is ADD. And then the final type he's identified is anxious ADD. So anxious ADD has a lot of these symptoms of classic ADD. You're disorganized, hard to concentrate, distractible, but you have this anxious, tense physical stress symptoms. You might have a lot of headaches, a lot of stomach aches. Predicting the worst, meaning you always expect the worst things to happen, very negative focus. You might freeze, you're so overwhelmed that you just shut down. And you are especially sensitive to lots of verbal correction, like when you feel you're being judged. The cause is there's high activity in the basal ganglia, which is the opposite of most types of ADD. And for treatment, he really recommends mindfulness things, lots of breathing exercises, relaxation techniques, as well as some of his supplements. If you take a stimulant for this kind of ADD, you could become more anxious. So neurofeedback is another great one for this type. Actually, neurofeedback is great for all of the different types. The struggle with neurofeedback is insurance doesn't always pay for it. So that can make it unaffordable for a lot of families. Now, I've just thrown a lot of technical terms out there. That's not my favorite thing to do when I am teaching a class. But when it comes to ADD, there is so much misunderstanding about what it is. Dr. Almonds, his Healing ADD book, his 7 types of ADD, is the best description that I have found that helps you look at, there's not a one size fits all for ADD. It helps you realize that treatments can be different depending on the type you have. So when this presentation is sent to you, I recommend take the ADD quiz. There'll be a link to the quiz. See what kind you have. Look at your options. There are even genetic medication testing that you can do. There's a doctor in town where you literally do a swab of the cheek, and then it helps identify which particular medications are going to work best with your DNA. So instead of, oh, I'm going to try Ritalin, that didn't work. Oh, I'm going to try Vyvanse, that did not work. Oh, I'm going to try Wellbutrin. Instead of doing it by trial and error, they have genetic medication testing. To me, that seems incredibly worth it. So that's the brain part. What about the behavior part? This is the part that drives all of us crazy. All right. Ooh, interesting. One of you mentioned we have done the mouth swab, the genetic testing for the medication, and it was right on. So that's good to hear that, that testimony for that. Now, one of my favorite people to go to workshops for is Dr. Barbara Sorrells. I'm going to write her name in the chat section. She is actually in Tulsa. So Dr. Barbara Sorrells. If you Google her name, she has workshops that some of them are free that she offers in town. She works a lot with the brain and trauma. But what I have found is a lot of the strategies she uses for trauma are great strategies to use for ADHD, for behaviors associated with ADHD. And this is where the big disconnect is. ADD is a brain thing. So the brain sets you up to have certain behaviors. The behaviors are a big part of it. The behaviors would probably not happen if the brain was typical, if it wasn't an ADD brain. But most of what we focus on is the behavior. And we have a lot of assumptions about why kids do what they do or why people do what they do. So Dr. Sorrells, she is amazing. She goes and challenges those ideas, okay? So traditional way of looking at it, neurodevelopmental. I have no idea how you would translate that word in Spanish. Neurodevelopmental, so like brain-based development. So traditionally, when it comes to misbehavior, the belief is children misbehave because they want to. When we look at a different wired brain, children have a biological drive to please those they have an emotional connection with. If you want to change behavior with an ADD kid, you have to spend the time developing that relationship. That's everything. When it comes to paying attention, the traditional belief is children just do things to get attention. They're doing that. That's attention-seeking behavior. The brain way of looking at it is children seek connection in the way they know how. Maybe a kid, the way they've learned to get attention is to pester you. Mom, 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 which drives you crazy. But if that stops and gets attention, then they'll keep doing that. So we can teach them different ways to get our attention. The purpose of behavior. The traditional belief is behavior, the only thing it is it's either to annoy somebody or to avoid doing something they don't want. A brain-based approach to behavior is it's a form of communication. Children act out what they don't have the words to say. When I am called as a school counselor we have like a staff meeting on a child. And the teacher or the parent will describe the behavior and the principal, will notice what are the patterns. That behavior is communication. So if they are struggling in an area, if we start to pay attention to the pattern, that helps us come up with a good solution. So these are some traditional beliefs versus brain-based beliefs. I'm curious, ask yourself, which one do you tend to believe? The way that I was trained as a teacher in the 90s is children misbehave because they want to. Punishment and reward, that will fix behavior. That was before we had as much knowledge of differently wired brains and autism and ADD and a lot of other brain-based issues. And that's changed our response to that, things that work, but it hasn't necessarily changed what people think. So I'm going to show you a video now with ADD and time. So many people with ADHD, they have a problem with being on time, with procrastinating, with getting too much, trying to finish too much stuff at once. That's actually a brain thing. So I love this guy's explanation of why people with an ADD brain have such a difficulty with time. So let's listen to his explanation.
ADHD creates a nearsightedness to time so that the person with the disorder cannot organize to the delayed future, but only to the imminent future. And so everything in life becomes a crisis. But the crisis was avoidable, and no one has any patience with this because they see this as a moral failing. You could have chosen to get ready, but you didn't. It is phrased as a form of laziness, this layabout, ne'er-do-well, carefree, careless attitude that you could change if you wanted to, right? But we know it as the executive failure it really is. This disorder precludes you from organizing across time. So you live in the moment, and you cannot organize very large, hierarchically sequenced behavior across time. It means that future-directed behavior is intentional behavior, which means ADD is actually IDD, intention deficit disorder. I don't seem to be able to accomplish most of the things I intended to do. You can call that a short attention span, but I think intention deficit disorder captures it much better. Now, the frontal lobes, the executive system is where you take what you know and you apply it in your daily life. It is not where you know something, it is where you use what you know. The back part of the brain acquires knowledge. The front part of the brain puts it in play. ADHD has separated these two like a meat cleaver. So it really doesn't matter.
Let me explain that further. When he says the ADHD brain has separated the back part of the brain, which is all the things I know that I should do, and the front part of the brain, which is plan of action to do those things. The ADD brain, those two parts of the brain don't communicate very well together. That's why for some types of ADD, a stimulant medication helps create a bridge to where those parts of the brain can communicate with each other. Just like Dr. Amen says, some supplements that he recommends, that fills the gaps in the brain that helps those parts of the brain cooperate together. Neurofeedback, that treatment modality, that helps balance out the parts of the brain so they cooperate and work better together. But the inability to manage time, the ADD brain is pretty much thinks right now or later. So right now, oh, I don't have to do that right now. I can do that later. But then tomorrow is later. And oh my goodness, I didn't do what I needed to do. And now I don't have enough time to do that now that it's right now. That's why a lot of people with ADD, we call them lazy or say they're procrastinating, but it's very difficult for their brain to break things down into little pieces. It's just, I need to do it all at once. I really struggled with this in graduate school because I would have papers that I knew I needed to do, but they were due another week. And so it might be 2 days before or the night before that it was due, but I would sit down and I'd have all this information in my head. And then because I was under pressure, that was like a stimulant for my brain, and I could write a 17-page paper in 3 hours. So, but it was so stressful to always be in this, oh, it's a crisis. It's a crisis. It's, oh, this is due now. That's a struggle that you have with ADD brain and time don't work well together. Also some other paradigm shifts when it comes to behavior. The traditional belief, if you want to stop bad behavior, is you've got to have a negative consequence and that'll stop negative behavior. A more brain-based approach is you teach the behavior that you want them to know. We cannot assume that they know how to not interrupt you. And if you constantly give them a consequence for interrupting, but you never teach them how to not interrupt you, teach them what the expectation is, the behavior won't go away in an ADD kid. It might go away in a typical kid. That's not going to go away in an ADD kid. They need lots of practice, lots of modeling, and the best thing you can do is routines. When things are consistent and the same, that helps them learn what they're supposed to do. When it comes to power, the traditional belief is I control behavior through power and control, reward and punishment, threats. That's going to control behavior. A brain-based approach is my power, I use that to influence learning and the behavior. The stronger my emotional connection with that child, the stronger my influence. There are some students that I spend lots of extra time with because I know our connection is going to really help when they need it, when they are in crisis. I've been able to walk into a kid throwing an absolute tantrum, but I already have a connection with that kid. And in 1 minute, I can have them calm because they will follow my instructions. They will listen to my suggestions because I have a connection with them. You have to form that strong connection. If your parenting is all correction, 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 they need to be corrected. You have to have balance. You have to, on purpose, do connection, connection, correction, connection, connection, correction. That has to stay in balance. So the big thing about this paradigm shift, this different way of thinking, is you have to teach them specifically what you want them to do. You cannot assume that they know what to do. The ADD brain does not pick up on cues. It doesn't notice a lot of things that other brains notice. It doesn't figure that out. So, and I'm going to keep moving just so that I can give you some good strategies too. So when I think about this, and I think about my child, if my child has ADD, or my students, or myself, the only behavior I can change is my own. Children do well when they can. Sometimes we are asking kids or ourselves to do all the things that a typical brain can do to behave the way other people behave, but we haven't given ourselves any support. Maybe we're not taking a supplement. Maybe we really need a stimulant. Maybe we need to change our diet, but we're still expecting perfect behavior. Children do well when they can. So put those supports in place. All behavior carries meaning. It has patterns. Look at their behaviors. Look at the time of day that those behaviors happen. Trust that the reality that the child is experiencing, that's their reality. Not how I think it should be. This is how it is for them. So some of you are like, what do I do? Okay, I'm going to send you these booklets. I mean, we could do 3 different classes just on one of these booklets. Because I attended an ADD summit this summer. Lots of amazing guest speakers and things like that. I'll send a link to the summit. It was $47, the best $47 I've ever spent. But in it, it came with some great resources. And so these are very specific, very detailed ADHD friendly routines. Here are a couple of things that stood out to me. All right. So first off, you have to create a predictable day. If your day is chaos, then your brain is not. The ADD brain, it will not work well in chaos. Kids need structure. They need consistent expectations. So it really highlights the importance of routines. So establishing a morning routine, a very specific way of doing things over and over the same way, makes a huge difference. Kids, especially kids with ADHD, they struggle with routine because they have difficulty focusing on a task for a long period of time. Well, check this out. It recommends break your whole morning down into 15-minute chunks. Okay, so instead of thinking about the whole morning, oh, we wake up at 7, we need to leave by 8. Break that down into 15-minute intervals. All right, so 15 minutes first might be washing face, brushing teeth, getting dressed. Next 15 minutes might be eating food. Next 15 minutes might be getting stuff ready to go out the door. Next 15 minutes might break the morning down into short intervals because they can't think of the 20 things they need to do to get ready. But if in this 15 minutes I do these 2 things, their brain can handle it that way. I loved that idea. Do that for yourself too. It also recommends getting anything done the night before that you can get done instead of waiting till the morning of. The ADD brain is rushed. It doesn't work well under pressure. So anything you can do the night before, that will save you all the arguments in the morning. It recommends, let's see, you can even have a morning tracker where you break things down into these little chunks. Let me see, what was the other thing that I really liked about this one? Sometimes you can even give out tokens. So like, or use a timer. All right, I'm setting the timer for 10 minutes. In this 10 minutes, brush your teeth, comb your hair, put on your clothes. Just give them short tasks and they need a timer. That can be a really, really helpful tool. The other thing that I loved is what they call prime time. There's a time of day that your kid or yourself where you are the most energized. Everybody's different. You've heard the phrase, oh, I'm a night person, or oh, I'm a morning person. The ADD person they have a prime time. Figure out what your child's prime time is, and then schedule more things when they're more likely to be focused. And keep the schedule more simple in the times of day when they might not be as energized. At school, we've even learned to give kids a protein snack, like a Slim Jim or something like that, when they are hitting that low slump of energy. And that can be a really powerful thing that re-energizes them. Frequent snacks can be very helpful too for kids with ADD. But I'm going to send you these books because they're so detailed that it would be hard to go over everything, especially since we're already at 7:30. This other one, though, that I want to mention, which was, okay, Same Page Parenting book. This is where, what if you have one idea about how things need to be done and the other parent has a different parenting style? When it comes to ADD, this helps you start to figure out how to work together as parents so that your strategies actually work. And that's a very common problem when parents are struggling with a child with ADHD. It's a very common problem that the parents are almost working against each other without realizing it. So I'll be sending that resource to you as well. Can be very, very important. But routines, those are absolutely everything. I will also send you some great information about having family meetings. Kids are not naturally organized with ADHD. You might not naturally be organized with ADHD. Having a regular every week family meeting where you talk about the schedule, you make goals, schedule, let's do something fun this week. Okay, let's decide together. That's actually teaching organization skills to you or your child with ADHD. It's also very important that you embrace imperfection. Get rid of the perfect way to do things. With ADHD, there is no perfect way. A lot of things, that's good enough. The bedroom does not have to be perfectly clean. It's good enough. Strive for finishing a task instead of the task being perfect. You have to get rid of that. And that's a tough one if you, and routines, if you want to make the most out of your day and help your children learn how to make the most out of their day, you have to have consistent, clear routines. If your whole family right now is kind of chaos, okay, then pick one area and let's make a routine in that area. Start small and then gradually work out for that. All right. Now, again, I wish I could spend more time on talking about behaviors, but we are out of time. I will also say too, baskets are your friends. The step of opening a drawer or putting a lid on something, sometimes that will keep a kid from getting stuff done. So they recommend putting baskets in every main area of the home, as well as a kid room. And baskets can sometimes be a better way for the ADD brain to keep things organized than behind closed things or in closed containers. So open containers are often better for a kid with ADD. Now, there are lots of things that Oklahoma Family Network has coming up. So there's a link to their website that will be emailed to you. This presentation will be emailed to you. And I know it was a little more information about the brain heavy, but if anything, I hope you understand ADD is a brain thing. It's not a laziness or they're not trying hard enough thing. Eventually, though, those behavior patterns can become habits. And that's just how we've learned to cope with it. And it takes some time to break those habits. All right, that is what I have today. I've had to, hopefully my interpreters are not have steam coming out of their ears because they've had to talk so fast. But I hope that has given you some good information that you might be able to use. I guess now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lauren. You did great. And thank you guys for bearing with us. I know it's a learning curve. This is the first time that we've done this. So thank you, Lauren, for being our guinea pig. We appreciate you. And again, go to our website. I will be, or Nancy will be sending out, again, information about upcoming events. And thank you, Lauren, for sharing our website. And we really appreciate your time this evening. Hope everybody enjoys the rest of their night. Thank you.
And Erin, also, I would recommend too, if you go to YouTube and just Google Oklahoma Family Network, the classes that they've offered, some of them that I've taught and other wonderful guest speakers, they have a lot of videos of their different classes on the website that you can go back and look at. Some really, really helpful things on your website.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren. I'm so glad that you brought that up. But we have our podcast with stories of inspiration and encouragement, and our YouTube. And on our website right here, she has all of our upcoming events. So if you just go to oklahomafamilynetwork.org, click under events, and you will see all of our upcoming ones. We also do yoga every Thursday from 12 to 12:30. That's really just a good time, power of meditation and deep breathing exercises. And again, if you have any questions or we can help support your families or those that you serve, please reach out to us and we will be happy to help and get you connected to resources. Thank you so much. Hope everybody has a great night. Thank you again, Lauren. You did a
My
wonderful job.
pleasure.